Good afternoon, everyone. Will the Committee on Executive Management please come to order? Noting the presence of Council Members Wire, Kia'aina, Cordero, Okimoto, and Nishimoto, and I believe Council Member Tupola will be joining us shortly remotely. I have to make a preliminary announcement. Pursuant to Section 92-3.7, the Hawaii Revised Statutes, this meeting will be conducted as a remote meeting by interactive conference technology with the following procedures in effect for the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony on all items on the agenda in person in the council chamber and remotely when each agenda item is taken up. As both English and Hawaiian are official languages of the state of Hawaii, pursuant to Article 15, Section 4 of the of the Hawaii State Constitution and Section 1-13 of the Hawaii Revised Statutes, members of the public may testify in either language. For oral testimonies offered in Olelo, Hawaii, additional time as may be necessary will be allowed for the testifier to provide an English translation for their testimony. For testifying, each person shall state their name. Each speaker may not have anyone else read their statement and is limited to a 1-minute presentation on each item. Once in-person testimony has concluded, I will proceed to those who have registered to testify remotely by video conference. When your name is called, please monitor your screen and activate your audio feed when prompted. I will then give persons who have not registered an opportunity to offer testimony. Please utilize the raise hand feature in Zoom to be called on. For those joining us by telephone only, please press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. I will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. When your number is called, please press *6 to unmute yourself when prompted. Some friendly reminders and tips. Video conference from a quiet location if possible. If you are also watching the proceeding on Olelo, please mute your television at the time you are called to testify. When the timer on the screen reaches 0, please conclude your remarks promptly. HRS Section 92-3.7 requires all votes at remote meetings to be conducted by a roll call unless unanimous. Therefore, I will first call for objections, and if there are any, I will call for a roll call vote. For those council members participating from the outside of the council chamber, in accordance with HRS Section 92-3.7, the meeting will automatically recess if we lose audiovisual contact with you and cannot reconvene until we reestablish contact. Therefore, please announce before if you will be voluntarily signing out of the meeting. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and telephone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones. Members, how I want to proceed is I do have an opening statement. I wanted to turn it over to Council Members Wire, Tupola, and Nishimoto if they'd like to give an opening statement as well, as their districts were most impacted by the KONA storm. Then I'd like to turn it over to the Managing Director and/or the Mayor if you want to make an opening statement. And then we can follow up by questions and then turn it over to the public for testimony. So thank you everyone for being here today. I want to open by sending a heartfelt mahalo from the Council to the countless volunteers, community leaders, organizers, and the frontline workers whose swift action in the early morning hours of March 20th prevented any loss of life during the unprecedented flooding we saw across the island. The community-led response immediately followed the floods was awe-inspiring and a testament to the strength of our people. I also want to thank my colleagues who have been spending considerable amount of time in their impacted communities, Councilmember Wire, Tupola, and Nishimoto in particular. We understand the need to be present in our communities at this time and the challenge that it creates in completing our regular business. So thank you for making the time to be here today. The primary focus of this initial meeting is to set clear expectations for the city as we move forward in our collective response to this disaster. It is my hope that this will provide additional clarity for both the public and this body as it relates to the who, what, and when of the city response. By the end of this hearing, we should have a clear understanding of the timeline, the chain of command, agency coordination, and the points where the city's response may require additional attention and resources. Before I turn it over to the Managing Director, I'd like to offer Councilmember Wire. Would you like to make an opening statement?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for convening this meeting. I imagine it's going to be one of many conversations that we'll be having both through the budget process and just as an island community about how to improve and meet the needs of the community. And I know you're going to hear from a lot of voices today from those that were saving lives and are still doing work down in the community, to those trapped in their home because they couldn't evacuate by the time they got the information about what they needed to do, and others that have experiences from across the entire district, a very broad and diverse district. And so I'm gonna have a lot of questions, and I'm gonna let their voices speak for themselves today. And so wanna similarly mahalo everyone that has just outpoured aloha and love to the entire community at all levels, from those on the ground working in the mud, working in our streams, pulling people out, saving people, continue to provide services. That includes city staff and employees as well to this day. And I know that the recovery ahead is not something that's gonna happen overnight. And so I look forward to this body working with the community and elevating their needs and what they wanna see to both ensure we make improvements, so some of the missteps that happen don't happen again, and also to ensure that we provide a path and a brighter future for the community. So mahalo, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Tupola, in accordance with Section 92-3.7 of the Hawaii Revised Statutes, please identify each person who is with you at your location, and then please proceed.
Aloha, Chair. Aloha, council members and community members. There's no one with me right now, and I thank you, Chair, for convening this meeting and for the time. Over the past several weeks, communities across Oahu, especially on the west side, North Shore, have experienced, and East Honolulu have experienced real hardship. Homes flooded, families displaced, and in many cases, uncertainty about what comes next. I want to acknowledge our first responders, city departments, and community partners who stepped up, often under difficult and rapidly changing conditions. Their commitment does not go unnoticed. Specifically in my community, I've been working with the following state and city agencies: HFD, DPR, EMV, DFM, DOT, and even HECO. At the same time, we're hearing clearly from our communities there were gaps in response, communication, and coordination. Some felt the response was too slow. I'm interested to hear directly from DEM and Director Collins, because I haven't seen them in my community or received any direct information, but that doesn't mean that they weren't working or moving pieces. I'm open to learning how they were moving and what was working and what roles they were playing. Our office has been on the ground, as well as many of my colleagues, speaking directly with residents, coordinating outreach, setting up hubs, pumping streams, pumping streets, helping people connect to resources, and seeing the strength of our communities. We must strengthen our emergency preparedness communication, improve interdepartmental coordination, and ensure resources reach people faster and more effectively. I hope today we can focus on accountability, heightened communication this week and in the weeks coming, and a lot of solutions. We remain committed to doing that and working together with the administration and the council. Mahalo.
Thank you. Councilmember Nishimoto, would you like to make an opening statement?
Thank you. I just have a brief statement. It's been a tough couple weeks for all of us, but it really has shown the best of what Hawaii is. It's shown that government, nonprofits, and community members can come together for the better of our community. I hope we can hear from how we can improve on that at this hearing, but I really want to thank all those groups for coming together and really pulling us out of this tough couple weeks.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to call Mike Formby. Would you like to start us off with an opening statement? Thank you very much for being here. I also like to acknowledge that the mayor is here, Mayor Blanchard. Aloha, Mayor. We also have the mayor of Kauai, Derek Kawakami. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your help also with this flood. The director of Department of Emergency Management and the deputy managing director. So thank you all for being here. Thank you, Mayor, Managing Director.
Council Chair, Committee Chair Waters, and council members, good afternoon. Mike Formby, Managing Director. I did want to offer perhaps Mayor Blangiardi and Mayor Kawakami an opportunity to make an early statement, because Mayor Kawakami is here because they have assets and resources down in the EOC. And we are still in an active EOC operation at a lower level, not at level 1, but at a lower level. And I'll explain that in more detail as we go along. But Mayor Kawakami has been the beneficiary of assistance from Oahu in the past, and he was very quick to offer experienced assistance from Kauai in flooding scenarios to us. And the two of them are going to be actually out in the field on the North Shore as soon as they can break away from this meeting. So I'm going to ask the two of them if they would like to come up first and offer comments.
Aloha, Council Chair and Council members. Derek Kawakami, Mayor County of Kauai. I wasn't anticipating to be in front of you today, but I'm truly, truly honored. I am here because we have our team from Kauai that is onboarded and deployed with your EOC and your IMT. In fact, some of our folks are getting acclimated with the team from South Carolina as we speak. I got to tip my hat off to Mayor Blangiardi. He was very quick to assess the situation and reach out to ask for assistance. And I will tell you this, looking from the outside in, if there is one thing that speaks volumes about a community, is its response to the darkest of their hours. And I will tell you, I am so proud of the people of Oahu. I mean, you talk about a community that is resilient, that is rugged, and ready to get down and help each other out in its darkest of hours. What I have been able to witness from the outside in is nothing short of phenomenal. We have tough communities out there, and it makes my heart smile, and I am an outsider letting you folks know how lucky you folks are to have tough communities that are willing to be neighbors when they need it the most. We have been waiting from 2018 to be able to return the favor that we received when Kauai was hit with one of the worst storms of our life. And we never forget who was there for us. And our folks were chomping at the bit to say thank you so much for helping us out back then. We have some of the very best and experienced that were out in Maui assisting. As soon as Mayor reached out, I talked to them. They said, give us a couple of days, we're leaving Maui. We gotta kiss our wives and our husbands goodbye again, but we wanna return the favor, and they're out here with your team. And I have to say, you folks have a wonderful team to manage this situation. To all of the council members, I want to thank you folks for being out there in your community when your community needs it the most. To all of the community members that were out there responding as soon as things happen, words cannot express the feeling that I have in my heart on how quickly you guys can respond. And to all of the first responder communities here, coming from an island that is no stranger to natural disasters and adversity, your folks' first responder team in that community, including the dispatchers, are all heroes, and they're willing to grind away. Chair and council members, I'm here to make a commitment that as long as you folks need help, we will have a team cycling in and out until we're all out of this. And that is a beautiful thing about living in a state like Hawaii. We may be separated by water, but we're all connected heart to heart. And I want to thank Mayor, and I want to thank all of you for the honor, the privilege, and the opportunity to help you folks out. Thank you so very much, Council Chair. Thank you, council members.
Good afternoon, Chair, council members. First of all, I want to start off by acknowledging Mayor Kawakami. If he thinks I was quick to ask, he was even quicker to say yes. And for that, we're deeply grateful. You know, this has been a tough couple of weeks. So I just want to set a little chronology, if you will. 15 days ago, a week ago, 2 weeks ago last night, we held a press conference over at the EOC because we had known about the KONA low coming up and moving. In fact, for the prior 4 or 5 days, we had begun trying to clean streams in different places. And we went into that with anticipation that this was going to be something pretty significant because the radar screens were showing us that. 2 nights later, Thursday night, it had already begun. It already started in Kauai. But it was really hard to tell here in Oahu the way the storm was behaving. It was unpredictable, if it will. We were getting some rain in some places and whatever. And the long and the short of it is by Friday night, it really began to put a lot of pressure on. And that night, I was on the phone with the governor, with the folks from DLNR, trying to decide whether or not we were going to evacuate Wailua. And it was all tied to the dam. And even in a subsequent press conference last week, or the Saturday night after that, the mayor said he thought those were the most harrowing moments. And we got through the first KONA low, and we didn't have to evacuate. The dams held up, although they had gone as high as 85 feet. And we were really close, but we were battling with whether or not we should evacuate in the middle of the night or whether we had a need to. And there was a lot of rain coming down. So we thought we got through that storm. In fact, the very next night on that Saturday is when we deactivated the EOC. We were closing the shelters. We had 3 families in Nanakuli. We got all of them placed. We worked it out. We thought the worst was behind us because the prediction for the second KONA low was that it would not be as bad. All the experts were saying that. In fact, the National Weather Service, as well as our local forecasters, that it would bring with it rain. And if anything, the concern was that we knew from the first KONA low, which I went on the air saying at that time, we're predicting between 15 and 30 inches of rain within 3 days. And that seemed to be an extraordinary announcement to make. And sure enough, we got that. But everything held up. But the ground was really saturated. And the reservoirs were full, and so were the streams. But we weren't incurring the kind of damage at that point. We thought, as I said, the worst was behind us, even though we knew it was a lot of water. So what happened very quickly after that was the second KONA low proved to be very different. And in fact, while we were concerned about every inch of rain that was falling at that time, knowing full well the grounds were saturated, we kept an eye on the dams. Things were under control. And then that Thursday night, a week ago tomorrow night, the National Weather Service was telling us that we can anticipate 2 to 3 inches of rain over the next 8 to 10 hours. I went to bed that night believing that, concerned, but also knew that we had the dams under control and we didn't have the kind of flooding that obviously was about to take place. The event of having 10 inches of rain in less than 3 hours created the kind of havoc, if you will, and destruction that we've all seen and witnessed, and certainly with the impact on Wailua. And across the board, it was an island-wide event, and we're certainly very aware of the windward side and Kahuku, Laie, everywhere. That was something that, it's just, the very fact that we've had nobody die, and the community itself out there was incredible in the rescues. And we were out there to hear that firsthand, but so were our first responders. There was a lot of heroic acts, and the fact that we rescued, and what I mean by rescue, by definition, people who were in a life or death situation, not just somebody you helped out. 233 people, and no one died. Not one kapuna, not one kid, not one kind of situation that you typically see. I don't know if you saw the flash floods that happened in Texas just last week. Afterwards, they lost 27 people. You know, in a flash flood in a place like that in Texas, you would think it would be so open, but in this community. So that was something that we really just couldn't prepare for. All we could do is respond to it as best we could. And I was there Saturday morning after we were trying to assess damage on Friday morning. In fact, this trip out to Wailua this afternoon will be my 6th time out there in the last 12 days, calibrating our success in our recovery efforts every 48 hours firsthand. And I know that our response to that has been excellent. And I want Mike to talk about that today, and I'll answer any questions anybody has. But I know how much we've put into it. And I can tell you that on Monday, we were back out there. And 6 days later, from what we saw, from that neighborhood board meeting to what was actually already accomplished has been pretty remarkable. We're now at 80% of the cleanup. We expect to be done by early next week. But I want to talk about one other thing tied to this, that second Kona low, and that's what happened in Manoa. Because in the middle of the afternoon, with nothing from the National Weather Service, by the way, they didn't even predict that. It wasn't even on their radar screens. In the middle of the afternoon, with the sun shining, actually late morning, midday, what happened at Manoa was another rain bomb, not quite as extensive, but it talked about it. So I met with the principal of Noelani the morning after. And he said, he's a surfer. And he said, you know, I saw the water come over the stream. I jumped in, went to change, take my pants off, get my board shorts on. He said, by the time I got done, he said, that didn't even take me 2 minutes. We were flooded. It was a river coming through and loaded up the cafeteria. Today, in the front page of the paper, there's a Hokulani, the other school there, is now closed for the remainder of the year, and you can see the damage there. And that happened with absolutely no warning. So what I'm trying to temper here is we had two experiences that were, you used the word, Chair, unprecedented. They really were. These rain experiences, unlike, if I go back to 82 and 92 with the hurricanes, okay, those were really bad, and I saw those firsthand. But this stuff here was something that was only wildly unpredictable. We had no warning on it, neither time, really. I'm not here to point fingers, but that's the truth. And I'm on record of saying, though, what we did see before the first storm, on the second press conference, that Thursday night before the Friday in first Kona low, I was asked by a reporter in the room, you know, how do you know this is even real? Because the storm hadn't really begun to manifest itself, and it seemingly got by Kauai pretty good, and that we were trying to hype they were accusing us of sort of hyping this thing. What we were trying to do is prepare the community. And I told him that night, and it's all in video, it's whatever, I said, I've been looking at radar screens for over 40 years in my broadcast background. I have never seen a system like this. I actually said, I think we're about to see something we've never seen before. And I stand by that. Now, I can't go back 100 years ago or whenever else, but I would tell you, what we experienced, we had never seen before. We ourselves didn't have the warning for it. We tried to prepare for it as best we could through Kona Low 1, and then certainly the surprises of Kona Low 2. And since that time, we've tried to respond to it in the best and most intelligent way we possibly can. And we've thrown everything at it. And I feel really proud of that. And I'll be interested to hear what some community members have to say. But we went out to that neighborhood board meeting that night to listen, and we listened. And by the next day, we were delivering on all that checklist of what people needed, and we've continued to provide that. But these were storms of a different kind. And I know it's easy, and look, everybody can Monday morning quarterback, and can we get better? Yeah. Is there room for improvements? Yes. Should we absolutely learn from the lessons that we just went through? Absolutely. So I don't even want to sound like we're being defensive. And I'm not even making excuses for anything. We've tried to respond to something that we didn't really know was coming to the best of our ability in the best way we could. And I think our response since that time, as I said, has been excellent. So I just want to set the record there and let Michael talk about the rest of it. Do we hurt for the people? Yeah. I'm going to say it again. No deaths, nobody dying. The situation we now face is just a question of time and money. We can fix everything on a going forward basis. And that's where we're at. So we hold a great responsibility in this job, okay? And I think that we believe that we've done all the right stuff. And since and after that event, I'm very proud of the work that's been done. So I'll let Michael take it from here.
Thank you, Mayor. Chair, I'll try to be brief. I just want to give a little bit of information to the community and to the council and to the community that's here today. Thank you. We're here to listen and to learn. I did want to note that because we're still in an active EOC, we have not done an after-action report, and that will come. The value of an after-action report is that you take all the data that's available over many days and it paints a picture. And there are shifts that come into the EOC. So there are people that are there during the day that are not there at night. And they don't have the opportunity to compare notes until after the fact. And it paints a fuller picture when everybody sits down after the fact and they go through day by day, hour by hour. They look at the weather forecast. They look at the alerts that went out. They look at the readings they had at the dams and the reservoirs. They look at stream levels. They look at the support they were getting from HIEMA. And they put all that together. And I'm here to tell you, from having done it before, it paints a pretty accurate picture. And that's when you begin to self-assess and to look at yourself and say, this is where we were remiss and we can do better, and this is where we did well. And so we haven't had a chance to do that yet because we still have people down in the EOC in the debris removal mode, processing mode. And just this morning, working with the Kauai EOC members, we talked about the fact that now that we're about 80% recovery, which means recovery of debris removal, we're starting the planning to get into the actual recovery mode, which is the fiscal mode, where we're looking for the money to be able to recover. And that's work with both the state and the feds. And that's where the documentation has got to be precise and exacting. A small mistake can keep you from getting reimbursement. And we still don't have a presidential declaration yet. We're working with FEMA very closely. They're on island and working with us. They've been out in our vans in the communities to document and verify the damage that has been reported by the community, as well as the damage that we've documented. And we believe that we're going to meet the eligibility requirements for a presidential declaration, but we don't know that we're going to get one yet. We hope we will. So right now, I wanted to just tell you that we had 2 emergency proclamations. The first one was March the 9th. The second one was March the 20th. In between the 2, there was a little bit of a lull. In fact, that was when the mayor did his State of the City. That was on March 18th. But for the purposes of the EOC, we pretty much have been stand-up since March the 9th. And what we found was, as Mayor described, is that what was forecasted from the National Weather Service for the KONA low storm number 1 did not actually happen. And what was forecasted for the KONA low 2 storm was much less than what happened, and it caught everybody off guard. For the KONA low 2 storm, we're sitting down there in the EOC, and the reservoirs, the dams, the river levels do not indicate at that time a severe need to evacuate. And one of the questions that the EOC is going through, and you have to understand, they're in a basement in the Fosse Municipal Building in downtown Honolulu. They have, except through the virtual cameras that they have and the input that they get from the first responders on the street, they don't have the ability to know what's actually going on in Wailua. So they use triggers and markers like dam levels, water levels, things of that nature. But when that event happened that night and the rainfall levels were 10 inches plus when they were forecasted at 2 to 3 inches, it really was something that was not expected. And we need to put all that together. We need to look at all the data, minute by minute, hour by hour during that critical period, and see what we can do better and how we could have better aided the community. And our commitment to the community is to do that. Right now, we're operating off an incident action plan. So every morning in the EOC, the mayor meets me with Randy Collins and Jennifer Walters and the EOC team, and we meet down in the EOC at 7:30 in the morning, and we go through the incident action plan structure. And I want to say that even during the event itself, it's a very structured environment. It's coordinated calls between the state and the county. The governor's on the state calls. The mayors are also on the state calls from all islands. And then we have our own internal EOC call after that. Now that we're out of the actual event, we're in the debris removal, disposal, and recovery mode. And it's different, but it still needs to be structured. And the structure is what enables us to operate efficiently. And what happens immediately after the event, after the deluge of rain, is that we shift from the emergency operations mode to the debris removal, disposal, and recovery mode. And what happened in that 24 hours between the two is that we're getting a ton of text, a ton of phone calls, and everybody is asking for support from different areas, and we're doing our best to give that support, but it's not perfect. In fact, it's imperfect. And the quickest way to resolve that is to put the structure in place that allows us to have a process that we go through. So when you look at our structure today, I'm going to pull it out. It's not for public dissemination because it has phone numbers for everybody that's involved. You have it's called KONA Low Storm Recovery. This is operational period number 8. It's for March 29th through March 30th. It's signed by the director, Randall Collins, and this is what sits in front of the mayor, me, the head of DEM, the deputy at DEM, and we go through this. And as you walk through this, it's a very structured incident objectives. You have all the objectives. You have the operational period, the comments, the situational awareness, and then it breaks up and it goes through, you have the organizational structure, and then it goes through item by item. The first one for now is debris removal, because that's what we're in, getting debris out of the affected communities and how we do that. The second one is damage assessment, because there are deadlines to when you have to provide the damage assessment to FEMA. So we're doing that at the same time that we're doing debris removal. The third one is Community Assistance Center. And this is where we have all of our resources, all of our partners that are assigned to work with us. We have lead for each one of those phone numbers, so the mayor can call them and he knows if there's a need that's not being met, who he can ask to do what. And now we're in the process of trying to stand up, to expand what we stood up at Wailua into other communities, including Laie, Kahuku, and Waianae, so that they have some access to these resources as well. And after the Community Assistance Center, you have housing. Housing is very important, trying to locate housing near the impacted community. We know that people don't like to leave their homes, but some people need to, so we're working on that. After housing, you have Waianae. So this is where the leader for Waianae, and that's Major Beckley, reports in to the mayor and the team on exactly what's happening in Waianae, the needs and the successes. Then you have Windward, and Windward is headed up by HFD Mokulehua. And Kevin Mokulehua reports every morning to the mayor and gives us a status update. For Wailua and Haleiwa, it's the Wahiwa IMT, and that's Major Ramson. He reports every morning. And so every day we go through this structure to make sure that we know exactly who's in charge, who's accountable, what we're doing for the day, and then we make adjustments throughout the day. And that's the mode we're in right now. So there is structure, there is a plan, there's leadership. Mayor and his team have been involved around the clock. And if you have any specific questions beyond this, I would like to defer to Randall Collins, the director of DEM. He can answer your questions. And just let the community know that we appreciate you being here today. We're here to learn. We're here to do better. Our commitment is to do better as we go along. We only want to improve in the support that we provide impacted communities. So thank you very much.
No, thank you so much to all of you for coming out today. And really, the idea today is not to assign blame at all. It's really to figure out what's going on. And also secondary is if we can learn from the situation so we can do even better. That really is the idea. So I appreciate you all being out here. I have 2 quick questions, and then I'm going to turn it over to the panel for other questions. But real quick, you mentioned that you were getting tons of texts and phone calls, and so were we. And you and I and the mayor, in fact, we had a brief exchange. But ultimately, I was calling directors and others to try to get resources down to the affected areas. But it would be really helpful to figure out in these types of situations who's in charge. Like, who should we direct those inquiries to, and who's calling the shots? Are you able to answer that? I know we talked a little bit about it yesterday, but that way we would know, okay, this is who we need to contact. Or when people call us, we can divert them to this person. Would that be you, Director of Emergency Management, the mayor? It's just, could we get clarification as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And I'll say that initially, before you have the incident action plan in place with all of your points of contact, it is a little bit fluid. And we were accepting all text and all phone calls from everyone as well. And we were actually assigning resources just based upon requests. I'd get a phone call saying, I need HPD up at Wailua because there is trash in the roadway. Councilmember Wire called me. I believe that was on Sunday afternoon, and we had a very heartfelt, productive discussion where I could sense that he had needs that were not being met. And so before you get this structure in place that you really have to have that puts the leadership at the EOC, it is a little bit dynamic because you haven't stood this up yet, and it takes some time. So as I explained to Councilmember Wire on the phone, the rain stops. We immediately start putting together all of the action plan components that allow us to have reporting entities. We have to assign leadership in the Waianae Coast, Wailua, Haleiwa, the Windward Coast. We have to have reporting entities. We have to be talking to Roger Babcock. So that structure takes a little bit of time, and I think it took us about 24 hours to actually get that in place. On Sunday afternoon, Ed Sniffen, working with us, was able to get the first sort of haulers up into the Wailua community to try to start removing the trash off the roadway. And we had HPD up there at the time. But the bottom line to your answer is that the leadership and the structure flows through the EOC. And the mayor's at the top, and then it goes to DEM, and then from DEM, it goes to the incident command team, and then it goes down to all the subsets, whether it's food, volunteers, community assistance center, debris removal. It's all very structured so that there's accountability when you ask for stuff to get done. And so today, I would say the leadership is with Dr. Randall Collins and the EOC team, but understanding that mayor's over all of that.
Okay, no, that's very helpful. And you also said earlier that Mayor Beckley Major Beckley is in charge for Waianae, HFD Mokulehua for Windward, and Major Ramson for Wailua. Are those the people we should be contacting if constituents contact us? Or do we contact Director Collins?
So our request is that everything go through the EOC, because if we're not capturing requests, what they do, we have this is a question for all the council members. Are you aware that we have a virtual EOC? Has that ever been shown to you? Okay,
No.
we should educate you on that. But I can go to my computer and I have a virtual EOC, VEOC. And on that screen, I can see everything. I can see every dashboard. I can see every operation. I can see every request for assistance. I can see every response. And for example, I'll give you an example. I think it was Monday of this week. Rep. Quinlan was calling me from Wailua, and he had taken a photo of a community where once they cleaned the street, the easement between the street and the homeowner was still a lot of mud and water. And he said, how do we get the mud off the easement so that the homeowners can access their homes? He took a picture, sends a picture to me. I upload the photo, I put it into the virtual EOC, it goes right into the command center. The command center then goes through the incident action plan and assigns it to the resource that can address that. And they have E&V and Board of Water Supply go out right away and try to figure out why there is still water in the easement, and it ends up there's a broken water main and there possibly is some E&V failures in that area. If it doesn't go through the EOC, then we can't track it and have the accountability that the community deserves. So we ask that people go through the EOC and they not do stuff outside the EOC. So if you have a request, you can make it to Mayor, to me, to Krishna, but we're gonna put it in the EOC because that's where it needs to go to have accountability.
Okay, that's super helpful. One more question before I turn it over to members. So in my preparation for today's hearing, I went online to look at the various emergency plans, and I came across at least 4. One was the Local Hazard Mitigation Plan, which actually is on your website, DM's website, and then you could click on any one of the different types of hazards. So I pulled the hazard profile dealing with flooding. I also found a comprehensive emergency mitigation draft plan, which actually is really good. It's a draft, though. It hasn't been adopted by the administration or the council. But I think it's really good, laying out who's in charge and all the various things that we as government workers should be doing. And then also the long-term disaster recovery plan, which at some point we have to transition from immediate needs to long-term needs. But it might be helpful just from your point of view, which one of these plans, and by the way, I didn't know about that daily impact plan, which I'm really happy to hear is happening, but which one of these plans, because would we follow? The comprehensive emergency management plan was drafted in 2025 but not adopted. The last comprehensive emergency management plan was, I guess, approved in 2014. So do we follow the 2014 plan? Do we follow the draft 2025 plan? The local hazard mitigation plan? Which should we be following?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Waters. I'm going to let Dr. Collins answer that.
Okay.
I'll tell you my understanding of it. My understanding is that we have a lot of plans that are in work, and there are mitigation plans that are intended to minimize the risk of ever getting into an emergency situation. And so we have them for fire, we have them for flooding, we have them for many different things. And those are all plans that are best practices that we try to put in place so that we don't have to get into an EOC and have an emergency operation, which is what an EOC is, Emergency Operations Center. So I'll let Dr. Collins speak and provide more clarity about when we're actually in an EOC, which plan is governing.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, MD. Randy Collins, Director of the Department of Emergency Management. It's a pleasure to be with you, Council. Appreciate the opportunity to share with you and talk about and give a good understanding of what our emergency operations are about. So with regards to our plans, you first mentioned the Local Hazard Mitigation Plan. Adopted last year, and very excited about this plan. This is a plan that every jurisdiction must have in order to be eligible for FEMA assistance. This is a plan that is not operational in terms of having dynamic activity where we're going to go save people. This is a plan that is done and really focused on infrastructure and other projects that reduce or lessen the effects and hopefully prevents many different disasters based on the hazard and based on the mitigation activities that you can take to do that. So as an example, with wildfire, one of the mitigation activities you want to do is remove vegetation that could create wildfire in a particular area. Therefore, it removes the likelihood of a wildfire happening in that particular area. So that's just one example of some of the things you might see in a local hazard mitigation plan. It's not something that we would refer to when this KONA low storm came. That's something that we refer to more in regular days and even in the long term in terms of our budgets and activities that we're doing on any given day to focus on. These should be the projects that we do or work with and coordinate with other entities that have responsibilities in there to do those mitigation projects and reduce or lessen the effects of disaster on Oahu. So that's the intent of that plan. The 2025 plan is a plan that, as you mentioned, it's draft. We're working on it because we have, as you mentioned, the 2014 plan that is much more comprehensive in terms of length and volume. And so the 2025 plan is our next iteration of the comprehensive emergency management plan. So no, it's not in effect insofar as we've signed it and sealed it and delivered it and published it. But what I will say is we obviously have lessons learned from 2014 and all the operations and exercises and everything that we learned from over the years. And we always incorporate those and make changes in our processes and things like that. So you'll see in that draft, as you mentioned, it's a good draft. We still got a long way to go on a lot of things that we need to do with that plan. But until then, we basically are following the 2014 plan. That being said, I would also tell you that our plans, along with the plans of most emergency management offices across the country, are very much based in national doctrine as well, some of which is called the National Incident Management System. And so most of the plans conceptually are very similar from 2014 to 2025. That National Incident Management System hasn't changed significantly, and it's certainly designed to start from an incident at a very low level and grow as the incident requires. And it also provides the framework to receive federal and state aid. And this is why all emergency management agencies, all jurisdictions across the country utilize that National Incident Management System, and that is a big portion of the content that goes into any comprehensive emergency management plan. So that being said, we're focused on the comprehensive emergency management plan of 2014. But as you, and I'm sure as you've seen, Chair Waters, that in there are also hazard annexes and specific annexes based on groupings of resources as well. And those annexes have different years. Some were 07, some were 2013, et cetera. And those are because with so many things, the iteration of changes over time, we can only get to a certain number of those annexes, et cetera, each year kind of thing. So we have this base plan, and that gives us the framework of how the entire jurisdiction will respond to incidents like last Thursday night. So then when we come to incidents like last Thursday night, if you're talking about, I've heard from you that you want to understand that chain of command better. And so what happens before we've really gotten to the point where we're doing these incident action plans that MD mentioned is the city's operating pretty normally. Police districts are operating within their police districts, fire districts are operating within their fire districts, all the other agencies are operating in their normal mode. And so what happens in an emergency response, as the rain's coming down, as the flood's coming down, police and fire are operating almost independently. There are incidents where they will co-locate and obviously support each other and that sort of thing, and there's a mechanism to govern that, which we call the incident command system. But every resource that goes out is activating the incident command system and utilizing that incident command system to organize their efforts wherever they may be. And they could be, fire could be running a water rescue operation in Otake, while police might be running just traffic enforcement and road and traffic control somewhere else in Wailua or something like that. But at some point, you want them all to come together and work as one team. And then that's what happens when you get to the first step is something called unified command. And then the next step would be to assign an incident management team, which we did assign the Honolulu incident management team getting into Monday I believe Monday. And so that incident management team, then their role is to coordinate all the agencies under one single incident management or incident action plan to govern that particular area and what they were assigned. And what they were assigned is I provide the incident commander of them a letter of expectations of the responsibilities that they are supposed to have and take care of with regards to that. If it's happening outside of that, the Emergency Operations Center continues to work with the single or groupings of resources that are operating outside the incident management team's perspective. But wanting to go back to Thursday night and the day that rain is falling, so there, I definitely know that fire was out there with an incident command structure getting ready. I spoke many times with Chief Samala on the ground. Police had their operations going on as well. Spoke with Cliff Ramson, Major Ramson, and many times on the ground there, and trying to understand that particular situation. So at that time, and it's best to think of when you're asking about chain of command with regards to emergency management, we have different levels of authority. And so at that tactical level, Chief Samala's overseeing the fire response, Major Ramson's overseeing the police response, and that's at that incident command level that we talk about. And then we talk about the multi-agency coordination level, which is what the Emergency Operations Center serves as. And there, the EOC director, so on Thursday night, I was stepping in as the Emergency Operations Center director. So there's where I am. And as the MD mentioned, as always, the mayor is always in charge on top of that in that policy level group. So those are our three levels: policy level, multi-agency coordination, and then incident command level. So it's a bit of playing three-dimensional chess and understanding those dynamics. So as Chief Samala and Major Ramson are dealing with the response, and I'm dealing with multi-agency coordination, they're in the fight trying to make those rescues that we know about and that we've heard, the 233 rescues and so forth. At my level, I'm working on getting them resources and providing them decision-making authority. We also have that alert and warning mission and so forth. So we immediately were requesting additional resources from the National Guard, high water vehicles, and other things that could support the mission, as well as we knew once daybreak came, because it's very hard to do search and rescue at night. You can't see, you've got rushing water everywhere, we've got roads closed, et cetera, et cetera. So our focus that evening was, obviously, if we have any intelligence or information telling us of rescues that we can make safely, we're going to affect that. But at the same time, as the early morning hours were going on, we were working cohesively together, all of us, to make sure we're getting all the resources in place to, at daylight, do a surge to go in and rescue all the people that might have been in need, which is where we also, we spared no expense. We even brought in OSD and lifeguards to come in and do something that they're not really typically doing. They're obviously always on the beaches, but now we're going to be doing their water rescue, and lifeguards seem to be like a good resource to approach, to throw at that. And so collectively, we all made a plan to work together to get those resources in as fast as we could and make all the life rescues that we could as soon as daybreak came, and we were able to better assess the situation with that daylight supporting us. So that's a little bit of what the chain of command, if you will, looked like, sir.
Thank you. That was really helpful. Just out of curiosity, is that when you talk about the incident command system and you have an incident commander, when we talk about an incident, is the KONA low storm 2 an incident? Because you got something going on Waianae, you got something going on in Waialua, right? Do you have a commander for each one of those, or one commander who's overseeing the whole storm?
So that's a matter of subjective experience, and I mentioned those three levels that we talked about also. So essentially, especially if we talk about hurricanes, hurricane's going to come over. It's going to affect more than one jurisdiction. It's going to affect different areas, and if you can break those particular areas down by areas of responsibility and assign an incident commander to those locations to be the on-scene incident commander, then that helps you break down the span of control across the board and allows you to start understanding priority. So in this case, obviously, Wailua, Haleiwa was the worst hit areas, and so in our priorities in our county action plan, we listed those areas as they get priority resources to get in there and start fixing things. And while we had, as the mayor mentioned, this was an island-wide incident, and so there are other things happening other places. They may not get the priority of resources because they weren't as significantly impacted, but those areas would also have incident commanders. And then again, that report back to the EOC allows us to understand the situations based on the information that they're providing, that allows us to identify who gets the priority of resources and support from that second level of theory. So you'll have incident commanders in different locations, and then at that county level, you have the EOC director, and then we have the mayor.
You know, the mayor went into a little bit of timeline the night of the 19th, and I didn't plan on getting into that, but I think I wanted to keep it more at a higher level. But when the rain starts, the river starts to fill up, right, and a lot of rain in a short period of time, at that point, did we have an incident command system in place, and was someone assigned to Waialua, as an example, someone assigned to Waianae, someone assigned to Manoa to take care of that, rather than just having one incident, the Kona storm, because you got stuff going on all parts of the island. It just seems like a good idea maybe to have an incident commander in charge of a different part of the island.
Yes, sir. So the answer is yes. The incident command system is designed, even if we just take it down to its very basic, a very basic incident, just for the purposes of understanding. A police officer that drives up on a motor vehicle accident, that police officer is the incident commander there. And the incident command system is designed to build based on the size and complexity of the incident. So anytime a first responder is dispatched to an incident, whether it's the fire department going to just a residential fire, one of those people, the captain or the battalion chief, is going to be the incident commander there. Any SWAT team call out, the SWAT commander is going to be the incident commander there. So as individual or groupings of resources were arriving into those particular areas, they definitely were incident commanders. But this goes back to understanding in the immediate response, we were going from those individual operations of police, fire, EMS, et cetera, to getting to a point where we can collectively get together and then have one incident commander, or a unit, what we call unified command, where two or more organizations have legitimate statutory authority over a particular issue. So obviously, HPD has authority over law enforcement. HFD has responsible over firefighting and rescue, kind of thing.
Yeah, and we can go through that, like I said, the timeline, but just as an example, I heard a story about the fire department coming where these folks are on a rooftop, and if we consider that an incident, where the fire department allegedly told the folks that we can't come to get you, stay on the roof of the house. But that would be an incident commander of whoever was on that fire truck. But really, anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Chair.
Members, I'd like to open up Councilmember Wire, then Tupola.
Thank you, Chair. Do want to mahalo. I think, as MD mentioned, we did have very productive discussions, and I appreciate the turnout from the city, state, the volunteers, and those ended up contracting with the state, and work is certainly progressing. I did want to dive into a few of the specifics. I'll go chronologically, and I'll just kind of do the forefront part because I think Councilmember Tupola is going to have additional questions as well. So I'm just curious, what time did you realize it was bad in Wailua, would you say, if someone asked you that question?
Very much trying to monitor with the Weather Service, and several phone calls between us and the National Weather Service as well as other entities. We're focused a little bit on the reservoirs as well, and talking to DLNR Dam Safety as well as the dam operators from Dole.
Was there a particular time? And sorry, I might jump in just to make it concise, more for my colleagues you know, because I know Chair mentioned not wanting to dive into specifics, but was there a particular time that comes to mind?
Yes, sir. I'll try to be more concise. I would tell you it's a crescendo for me. You know, so we got the word from the National Weather Service at 10:57. There's base flash flooding. So obviously, as the mayor explained, we weren't expecting that. So at 11 o'clock, it was like, okay, that's my first red flag that things are starting to get bad somewhere. But the alert was for island-wide, so I wouldn't say that I knew specifically about Wailua Haleiwa at that point. Then at 1:53, the Weather Service upgraded to flash flood warning with the moniker of considerable, which is pretty significant. And again, it's an island-wide warning. But at that point, I would tell you, so that was at 1:53 a.m. Definitely around that time, we were starting to get reports from the first responders and so forth that there were flash flooding problems in many different areas. And we were even hearing of responders getting stuck in the water, in their police vehicles and so forth. And so...
And that was up prior to the 10:57 p.m. National Weather Service alert?
I'm sorry, Councilmember, can you say that again?
Yeah, and sorry, I do have a monotone voice and speak really low, but was that awareness prior to the 10:57 National Weather Service alert? The things you're talking about in terms of first responders, 911 calls, all of that?
Yeah, no, that was after, because at 11, when that first warning came out, that's when we decided to activate the Emergency Operations Center. So there was drive time. We weren't in the Emergency Operations Center, so there was drive time in, turn on the Emergency Operations Center, which doesn't happen, you know, at the flip of a switch or anything.
So what
like
time
that.
was that it was turned on?
So we activated at 11. Again, that's still, it depends on where our staff are coming from. I'm coming from Waikiki, so that's 15 minutes at that time of night or so, getting into the OC and then doing the startup procedure.
Okay, so activated 11. What stream level typically triggers evacuation orders for Otake Camp?
So for Otake Camp, and especially even during the KONA warn storm, or you know, the focus isn't the stream level, it's the reservoir level. And so we have to look at that reservoir level, and if the reservoir hits a particular level, then that's when we make that decision to evacuate Otake Camp based on reservoir level.
So the reservoir level specifically, I think what you're referencing is the spillway, right? When it gets to 80 feet, additional water goes in. Is that the reason you're bringing that up in reference to Otake Camp?
I bring up the reservoir level because we were monitoring the reservoir levels, because we hit the proper thresholds, and it's not as simple. It's not even really a threshold. It's a decision point, because we were coming very close to that in previous storms. But if the rain has stopped, and we're monitoring those reservoir levels, and the reservoir monitoring system...
I think we're going away from the question. I guess first the question is, why are you monitoring the dam? And I'm not saying you shouldn't be. I'm just wanting an explanation of why you're monitoring the dam in reference to potential flood impacts.
So we monitor the dam. If it hits the spillway is a good thing. The spillway allows to relieve the pressure off of the dam.
Correct.
And so we want to see if that even works. Okay, it hits the level, the spillway is activated. Will it go down? You know, we want to look at that. And so, but we're looking at that reservoir level, because if it's going to come up to, and I hate this word, it's not our word. All the emergency action plans use the word failure, and that can mean many different things. It means that the water can come over the dam, and that could...
Okay, yeah, I'll stop you. I think I'm just asking because, you know, I think there's definitely concerns about monitoring the spillway, right? Because you're going to see an increase in water entering the stream, which could result in potential flooding. And of course, you're monitoring the height of the dam, right? Because being earthen on the other side, once the water goes over the top, it could quickly erode. And so that's the concern for potentially breaking the dam, right? Does that sound correct?
Yes, sir, but I would add on that
Please.
On Thursday night, while we were monitoring the dam levels,
Correct.
As mentioned by the mayor, I think the dam levels, we're getting close to things that we would take action on, but at the same time, it's that 10 inches of rain that we got in just a certain amount of time that was just coming right down on Otaki Camp and on Wailua and everything else. That created flooding as well as the addition.
Totally understood, which is why I started with the question about the stream gauge by Otaki Camp, right? Because of course you're monitoring the dam for water, and of course the community all knows. Of course, many were asleep, but the community is well aware. We actually talked about this with you at the Waihawa Neighborhood Board the week before, right, when everyone was concerned about the last dam. And we had an extensive conversation as a community, right? And so that's specifically why I was asking about the assessment of the stream gauge, right? Okay, so we're working from that. So it seems like there was ambiguity about how severe the flooding was. Seems like the stream gauges weren't incorporated into that analysis, and there was a reliance exclusively on alerts coming out from the National Weather Service. Is that a fair statement? Aside from monitoring the dam.
I'm positive that we are monitoring every node of information that we can get into the Emergency Operations Center that's provided. And so we are monitoring stream gauges. We are monitoring, we even have the Weather Service most of the time in our Emergency Operations Center. And so we're working very closely with them. There's USGS gauges, there's state gauges, and there are National Weather Service gauges, all that have to be monitored, all that are not real time. Sometimes they take 90 minutes to update, sometimes they take 15 minutes to update, and they're very inconsistent.
Yeah, so I know at 11:30, the stream was at 29 foot over the minor flooding stage. At what point did you request first responders to initiate door knocking and alerting households? Or was that a request? Maybe I should ask that. Because historically, right, that's often what occurs when first mandatory evacuations occur for Otake, and of course, if they extend out broader, to what extent were there communications with first responders about the levels that we're seeing in terms of the water coming in and that we need to initiate those evacuation conversations?
Well, I would definitely say after 1:53 a.m., we were definitely talking with, and maybe before, but we were talking with the first responders on the ground with radios and in some cases some cell phones. And so we had HFD, HPD, and ESD all in the Emergency Operations Center at the time, and trying to get an understanding of what they were experiencing in that particular area. And so that's after 2 a.m., still trying to make an assessment. Again, it's dark, it's night. My expectation of them being able to see is not high because of the conditions, the weather conditions, and so forth. But we were starting to get those reports of our emergency response being impacted because those first responders couldn't even get into the particular area. And
so just, I'll go quickly because I know, Chair, there's other folks to ask questions. So I'll just wrap up real quickly. So the first evacuation order, when did that occur?
So in reality, based on an evacuation order based on the reservoir levels, it wasn't until, I don't even have that right now, it was until after the 5 a.m., it got into the 5 a.m. time frame.
Yeah.
But I would tell you, I think what you're really asking is at 3:42, just prior to 3:42, I got a call from Major Ramson, and this was the first and clearest report that I had about the weather conditions in Wailua in terms of what was happening.
Report on the ground.
A report on the ground.
Even though the 1 a.m. stream height was like almost 35 feet.
That's correct.
Okay.
And so it was that
And-
picture that then made me put out the wireless emergency alert at 3:42. But you'll notice on that wireless emergency alert, it wasn't designated for Otake. It wasn't designated for, specific to the Wahiwa Dam and who we would notify for that. It was,
So it was specifically geared towards the dam?
No, it was specifically geared toward the entire area of Haleiwa and Wailua. And because it wasn't based on the dam, it was based on the flash flooding. And it wasn't, we messaged, if you can evacuate safely, do so. We had significant concerns, though. If police and fire can't get in, we're telling people to go outside of their home, get in their car, or do whatever to evacuate. That means they're getting into rushing water where our officers can't get in, our responders can't get in. It's probably not a good idea to put the citizens in a evacuation mode and drive out in those same conditions. Again, dark, night, can't see the rain, and so forth. Safer to have, make your best assessment to stay in a house as high as you can be and use your best judgment and not getting into rushing floodwaters.
I think overall that's an understandable position. I think my larger concern was it just doesn't seem like all the data that's available that the community knows to look to rely on. I mean, they shouldn't have. I encourage them to leave, but I know folks that still stayed home during the evacuation order because they were watching that dam level, right? We know the stream gauges. I know folks on the ground are reacting, but that's the reason I wanted to clarify those questions, because I think the assumption is as data points or resources go down, say the radar is out on Molokai, you're going to use all the tools you have and then make those assessments. And so that's just my concern with this particular line of questions, because by the time those alerts went out, folks were already trapped in a lot of ways. And so, and I have a lot of other questions and think there's going to be improvements we can incorporate through the whole process. I started chronologically. There's the shelter issues that I think we can work through, particularly when we're dealing with flood victims. But I'm going to pause there because I know some of my colleagues have really important questions as well. So mahalo, Chair.
No, thank you. Before we go to Councilmember Tupola, just to kind of wrap up what Councilmember Wire is saying, why wasn't the evacuation notice given at 8:25 p.m. when KONA stream gauge surged 2 feet in 2 hours, knowing that according to the local hazard plan, which identifies Wailua as one of 3 known flood plains on Oahu, knowing that we had to evacuate Wailua in 2021, knowing that also the flood plan says that areas that are saturated, and which we know that happened, like Wailua was saturated, that once the surge of Kaukonahua happened, that's when the evacuation maybe should have occurred. But it doesn't seem like the OEC was lit back up until 10 p.m. So I guess who was in charge at 8:25? Who could have or should have made that call?
Well, I don't have any knowledge of that particular incident. That was obviously 3 hour, or 8:25, 2.5 hours before we activated the Emergency Operations Center, which means we had no knowledge of such an event happening at that moment. And at the same time, I would tell you that not only did we not have the knowledge of that, we weren't, so when we're not on duty, we have a duty officer system so that 911 can get a hold of us at DEM when something arises. And we never received a call at any time until we hit a threshold at that 11 p.m. with the National Weather Service issuing a flash flood warning, and that was our trigger to activate. Had we known about any type of major flooding happening at the time, at 8:25, then we would have certainly evaluated that and determined if we needed to activate an emergency operations center at that time.
So there's a gauge system right around the island, and there was a gauge in Kaukonahua stream. Wasn't someone monitoring that? Because again, that stream rose 2 feet in a really short amount of time. That didn't alert anybody to say, hey, look, we got to look at this.
So the monitors don't alert anyone, and that's a problem. And on top of that, I would tell you that this is one reason that I am a very much large advocate for DEM getting the staffing that we need to do a watch desk that's married right there in the JTMC with the other 911 operators, that we can monitor all the different hazards that we have, whether that be reservoirs or the Alert West cameras and other mechanisms to monitor those early warning systems. And I know that I've been working with council members on an AI early warning hazard detection system that's I hope will give us more data, the better data that we need to make decisions in the Emergency Operations Center. But at this time, we don't have that.
So according to the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan, DEM duty officer is assigned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and advised of such events by police and fire dispatch, state warning point, concerned citizens, or other agencies. So did we have a DEM duty officer assigned on that night?
Yes, sir. We had a DEM duty officer assigned on that night.
So that person didn't?
In fact, we had 3, and the problem with our duty officer program is that it depends on the duty officer getting the phone call, and on top of that, they don't have to answer the phone. That's why we have 3 duty officers. So they're not on standby pay, so there's no mandatory requirement for them to answer the phone. That being said, my staff are extremely dedicated, and they always answer the phone, and we always, rush to the call. But we didn't get any calls before that time, and so they're not monitoring anything. They're on off-duty time. And so, the first trigger that we got for activating the EOC was at 11 o'clock, 10:57.
Okay, and just to follow up, it says the DEM maintains citywide systems and procedures for monitoring for threats, unusual events, and emergency situations, which arguably, based on what happened with KONA 1, well, I'll leave it at that. Thank you. Councilmember Tupola.
Thanks so much, Chair. Thank you to you and to Councilmember Wire for those very important questions. Those are actually at the crux of many of the community concerns is who made the call, at what time, and why it was delayed. And so I think one of the things that I took away when we opened Kole Kole during the tsunami, and this is for Director Collins, they gave me a minute-by-minute breakdown of every decision, who made the decision, when things were made, and I think people still haven't really been clear, even us. That's why we're having this hearing. We haven't been clear on minute to minute, and we don't need a explanation. Just get out a sheet. You know, the Navy, the Army, the military, as soon as we open that gate, we close it, boom, they're like, we have an assessment of everything that happened, how many people passed through the gate, what we did. Like, we need to have that written, less lengthy answers and more concise, very clear answers about that. You know, I feel for the people. I feel for them because some of these individuals, like Councilmember brought up, it was just terrible, you know. And so I'm gonna bring up a few things that I think should be improved. I'm not gonna ask a lot of questions. I really just hope somebody is there taking notes. I mean, if they're not, I can take my own notes. But first off, I do think that trapped externally. So for me, there's got to be levels of how we're assessing the community. Whoever is trapped externally. And I'm bringing that up because of what Chair Waters just said, because there's a family in Laie who the parents of the children were gone. And they had 2 elderly people in there, and their kids were alone. And no one let anyone come into that street to help them. Sure, they didn't die. But their parents called. They were traveling, and they called. They said, please, somebody go to our house and get our kids out of the house. And the word on the street was no one can enter. They blocked both sides of the street because they said, oh, it's too flooding. The first thing that we should do is see if anyone is trapped externally. Councilmember Wire said something very important. Who goes door to door? Because who went door to door to make sure that people were out of the house so that we knew that if we closed off that street, that nobody was trapped? So that's number one. We got to look for people who are trapped externally due to whatever it may be. Maybe they can't exit. Secondly, the elderly that are trapped. Maybe they could get out, but they can't physically move. That's the next thing we should worry about, because in every community, including my own, we had people that just couldn't move themselves out. Thirdly, we have to see if people are utility trapped, meaning like they don't have water, electricity. There's some type of hindrance of them being able to just shelter in place or stay in their house. Fourth, and we all know about this, when we move everyone to shelter, right, to get shelter assistance. So once they have shelter assistance, then the next step is placement assistance. And to everyone's point so far, I do not know who made the call to shut the shelters down, but we weren't ready to get shut down. We had people that still needed to be placed. I don't know who made the call. Nobody called me, but we had to stay there all night because a whole lot of chaos broke out because, the placement assistant needed to be there. Next, we need to set up hubs in every area, even if they are interim hubs, because people needed resources and they couldn't move. There are still people whose cars are inoperable. They cannot walk, they cannot go to the store, they cannot go to work. So we need these interim hubs set up. Lastly, we need those hubs flooded with resources. We ask the community what's needed, and then we put those resources at the hub. And I know every time I talk to them about Laie, they say, okay, yeah, we have stuff in Kahuku. There are people in Laie, they can't drive, and they are not able to get to Kahuku. So saying Kahuku is for Kahuku. Saying Laie is for Laie. Saying Hauula is for Hauula. It's not like we can all share resources. There's a lot of distance between those towns. Lastly, then we have to assess whether or not we close or we continue, right? Because up to some point, there is going to be the ability for the community to help themselves, which we're not at that now. Lastly, I wanted to talk about the communication. I just need to give a shout out to Andy Sugg. He is the only person that kept our council members updated minute to minute. We were on a text thread with him. How grateful I was to finally hear any update, because I will say that I'm subscribed to the notifications and they were not very specific and helpful. And I don't know who writes the notifications on the HNL alert, but I did not get a lot of information out of that. So thank you, Andy Sugg. Thank you. Even to today, he's answering my phone calls, answering my texts, and it's been a world of a difference. So there's 3 levels of communication that I think we need to improve at. You guys have your intercommunication, that's between you guys, the admin, and all the agencies. And that's a lot of what has been talked about today. And that's great. You guys communicate. Where is the intra-communication between you guys and us? The fact that today it was said that we should brief ourselves on a virtual EOC that we don't know about. I have no idea why that's coming up today on April 1st. So I don't think it's helpful for us to only have intercommunications. We have to have intra-communications between the admin and us. Lastly, external communication. Much of the information that you guys are passing needs to be concise, short, clear, because I'm getting text messages and sharing it, and then the departments are like, oh, no, that's not for the public, it's for this. Then write a sentence that's concise, clear, and accurate so that we can share it. It's a very hard thing to do in emergencies, but that's how we're going to be able to succeed. Concise, clear, short communication. Intra, external communication. 3 of them. I really feel like it's not that hard, and I think we're really relying on ourselves too much. We have to really bump up all 3 levels of communication, because even till today, I was in Laie on Saturday. They said nobody had come to help them, and I know Councilmember Wire is, doing so much in Waialua, so I asked him graciously, can I go and help them? So every area has their different needs, but easily we could do a quick Zoom call with whoever in that community needs help, and then give them the information about the resources without having to do any high-level coordination. We could do something quick and fast, because people are dying for communication, really, really needing that communication. And so I will stop there, but I just want to say, there have been many, many helpful people. I will say the deputy of ENV, he's been very responsive, because I got trucks that need to get dumped. I have community members that are expending their own money. I'm trying to get waivers at ENV, so he's been helpful. Andy Sugg's been helpful. And I know that they kind of represent all of you guys, so I do want to thank them publicly for answering all the calls. In DFM, I'll give one more example, Chair, and then I will conclude. The whole thing that happened with me and my community with DFM is that DFM went out there with 1 Vector truck. And guess what? It wasn't making a difference. 1 Vector truck stayed there all day, and you couldn't even see a difference in the water on the road. It looked exactly the same. So I told him, I said, we're going to have to get more pumps out here. So I called Kalani Ha'o. We got 2 HFD pumps, 1 DFM pump. DOT hired a second contractor. So they brought 3 pumps, asked the private property owner if we could pump onto their land because we were wasting too much time running Vector trucks back and forth. We had to literally move the water. There was a gentleman that hadn't left his house for 2.5 weeks. He was in his home because he could not leave. And they have no water. Still till today, no water running. So we stayed there. And the reason I'm sharing this is because the coordination between everybody is what's needed. And I'm not sure who's supposed to do that. I don't think it's supposed to be an incident commander. I think maybe somebody within D, I don't know. But DOT specifically told me we are not going to send you guys trucks or things if no one's out there to coordinate, which is smart because they didn't know exactly where the road was. So that's the reason why I had to stand there because DOT was coming, HFD was coming, HECO was coming, DFM was coming, the contractor was coming. So that point of contact, whoever it's supposed to be, that's so important because there are certain areas that needed like a flood of resources all at once and one person to coordinate all of that. So I don't know in the future when all that happens, but those are the kind of things that are still needed today. And I hope that maybe whoever's agency is supposed to handle it can, I can pass that off to them because I do think there's many people that can start to lift and make this work lighter. But a lot of it isn't going to just be the city. It's going to be many other hands, private, public, because HECO's not part of the city or the state, but they came out and sent me trucks as well. So anyways, thank you, Director Collins, for being here. And I really do just want to iterate, like if we can pump up our communication, we need to do that yesterday. And Chair, I have to log off, but I'll still keep listening in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, you bring up good points, and that's why I was asking, who are the incident commanders? Because I think multiple council members were asking for support and help, and rather, it might be better just to go to the one person. Maybe that might be you or managing director, as mentioned earlier, but that was part of the problem. We're all asking for help, and really, different communities needed probably the same equipment. Is there any other questions for DEM from other council members? Council member Okimoto, followed by Cordero, and then Wire.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Hello, good afternoon, Director Collins. Some of my questions were already asked. I was going through the timeline as well. I think Chair Waters went through in the beginning. He kind of had a good grasp of it, but I still feel like some of my questions were not answered, even though they may have been posed. Because the timeline is not working out for me. And I know that the frustration of my colleagues who had their respective districts really impacted is a little confusing. And I think we're, on the budget side, we're working on what can we do on the post-in. But to me, the prior to the disaster happening, does it make sense to me? I'm struggling with just accepting that we were told it was going to be just a few inches and it wasn't. And when going through the timeline that was given through you and also through the Civil Beat article, I don't understand if you can explain to me why the previous week on the KONA 1 storm, where the evacuation order was given at 29 feet, that didn't translate over to the KONA 2 storm. And you said, I think you and Mayor MD, or I'm not sure who was it, maybe multiple personnel said this, that you guys are watching it, but it didn't warrant it. And I don't understand that. Why would it warrant it the week before, and now a week later, when the ground probably was still saturated with water in it from the previous week, why you guys waited until later when the water was even higher than it was the week before when the evacuation notice was given?
I'm sorry, council member, what's the specific question?
Okay. Week 1, KONA Low 1, I believe at 29 feet, the water level evacuation notification was given. Why was that not the case with KONA Low 2? Why did you wait until it was, I was taking notes, I have some of my notes as well, over the same mark that it was the week before, I think 32 feet. You said at 1, nope. I have my notes here. You said that I think at 1:30, 1 o'clock, that it was at 30, almost 35 feet, but the evacuation notification wasn't given until much later. You said 3:42. You finally made the decision to advise the residents to evacuate. Why was that the case? Why did you wait that long when the week before, at a lower level, the evacuation notice was given?
So again, it is not as simple as just looking at the feet level.
Well, I think that's where our concern is. Why not? What are we waiting for? If you're waiting for 911 calls, that to me doesn't make sense. If you're saying that you had people 24 hours and you didn't get any 911 calls and so you didn't see the need or you didn't feel the urgency to do so, that doesn't make sense to me. And I will second what Councilmember Tupola said. I think Andy Sugg did contact us, but it was about 5-something in the morning. By then, I wasn't just me. My district wasn't the one solely impacted, but I have friends in the districts that they're calling me panicked, trying to figure out what's going on. I feel like we're looking at the back end, and again, I think Council Members Nishimoto, Wire, and Tupola were there to help people on the back end, but I'm concerned why were the errors made on previous? Why did we let that happen where we didn't let them know to evacuate? They're struggling, and then it got to the point where first responders weren't able to go in. We need to do a better job there. And I know you've explained this. I know the mayor has explained this, and so has managing director. I haven't found confidence in the explanations that have been given so far, and I don't think it's acceptable to just state that there's been multiple factors when people's lives in their homes and they lost everything. And yeah, we're grateful that nobody lost their life as well, but that could have been different as well.
Council member, if I may. I think what I want to share with you is that when you're down there in the EOC and you have 100 people plus in the EOC from all the different departments, and you've got flood gauges and all kinds of data, national weather support, it's the totality of the information that you're receiving and inputting. And it's in addition to all the calls that all of the different departments are getting behind you. So Department of Transportation is getting calls from council members and reps asking what is going to be our transit response. We're getting calls to DCS about what shelters. All of that is going on at one time. It is, I really would like to invite the council members to come down into the EOC and be there and observe what happens in the EOC so that you understand firsthand the complexity of the information that is being processed by 100+ people, minute by minute, in coordination with the state and HIEMA. So we're in constant coordination with all of them. And it does come down at the end of the day to a judgment call. And I promise you that they do their very best, but it doesn't mean we get it perfect. And that's the purpose of the after action report. We go through it minute by minute, hour by hour. We look at all of the information that came in from all of the different sources, and we say things like, could we have made that decision earlier? That's the purpose of the after action report, which we haven't done yet. But if you come down to the EOC and you sit there, that environment is extremely complex and frenetic. And you're calling upon the leaders to make decisions. And it's easy after the fact to look at certain data points and say, why didn't you do this or that? But at the moment when you're down there and you've got 5 people trying to talk to you at once about rescue operations and power outage, and that's the way it is. And so I would like to invite all of you to come down to the EOC, learn more about it. That probably doesn't answer your question. I think when we get to the after action report, we will be in a better position to go minute by minute, hour by hour, and he'll have all of the times in front of him, and he can tell you exactly where we were remiss, where we can do better, but we're just not there right now, council member.
Thank you, Managing Director. I was able to visit the location of the EOC when I first got into this seat back in 2022, 2023. So I'm grateful for that opportunity. I don't know if it's wise for a bunch of us council members to be down there during an emergency, so I don't know how we could experience it. I was wondering, when this EOC is activated, what's the structure of it? You mentioned hundreds of people, and I think that's what I'm trying to figure out. There has to be some kind of structure. FEMA has their org chart. There's a plan, and I'm, of what they would go through in the process. I would assume that we should have that as well, because it's an emergency, so we have to be prepared. I think in here in the HRS it says that the training should be happening. I would hope that there's training for these types of incidents. We're an island. It's not, even though the last big storm was 20 years ago, Mayor Kawakami and I know from being from Kauai, we're an island and we're prone to storms and natural disasters. It would be nice for us to hear some kind of structure of what this looks like. When there's a call, I understand that there's multiple departments, but who's in charge? Who's making the calls? I think HRS 127A says the mayor is in charge, but then we have the DEM director. I've heard today incident commanders. It's really confusing. This org chart is not clear to me, and I am hoping that you guys will share the after action. You did mention when you first came up here that you held up this incident action plan. I think like Councilmember Tupola said, it would be helpful if we just are not kept in the dark, because we in our positions have to work with you guys, and we have to represent the people in the community. And as much as I know that you care for them, we live in these communities, and it pains us when we don't have answers for them. So I think my concerns have been on I'm trying to figure out what we could have done differently up front. And it seems like evacuation, the notifications of the sirens was a big thing. Again, the article in Civil Beat talked about certain of them, some of them were broken or they weren't working. Not everybody is logged on or signed up for the H&L alert. So what can we do differently or better so that we're not at the post-storm having to deal with such trauma and tragedy that now we're trying to figure out, okay, what can we do? How could we evacuate it better? How could we have, we can't prevent the natural disaster from happening, but we can be prepared to identify it, inform or educate the residents and get them out safely. I am grateful that nobody, again, lost their life, but that's not always the case. Most times it's not.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate those comments. And Council Member, I can tell by your comments and your questions that we probably haven't done a good job of educating the council on the EOC and the structure. It is extremely structured. And even when we're not in an event, we should bring you down there and show you the layout of the command center, and you will see how structured it is. That's part of the challenge, is it is extremely structured. So there's a front console where the mayor and I sit, along with Director Collins and Director Walters. And then there are teams throughout this room. And on the board in front of us, there is all kind of data, and they can toggle between data depending on what we want to see. So we're following the water levels in Lake Wilson, and we can see when it's dropping, and we can see within a matter of hours when it literally went vertical. And that's when they put out that emergency evacuation. It literally went vertical because you don't know when the rain is going to stop. And then when it does stop, you start to see very gradually, because of the spillway, you see right in front of you, you see the stream levels and the reservoir levels drop. And all of this is going on, but it's extremely structured, but it's chaotic at the same time, because every one of those departments that are seated in that room, and they're all there, are getting individual calls and inputs. A road is blocked, a power line is down, a stream has blocked traffic, people want to shelter. All of this stuff is happening at one time. And what it does is it comes up to the people at the top, and they have to make critical decisions, and they do their very best. But I promise you, it's not perfect. That's the reality of how it works. So I would like to get all of the council members down there when we're not in an event, take you around the entire facility, let you ask every question you want. We'll give you all the structures in writing so you can see how structured it is. It is not an unstructured environment, and things are not happening willy-nilly. But the truth is, you don't have all the information you would like to have when you're being asked to make very critical decisions. And sometimes we get it right, and sometimes we don't.
Thank you, Director. Really quick, just because you mentioned the spike in the water levels, and I'm not going to, again, profess to be an expert. I know that's what the director and deputy directors are for. But on March 13th, so there was a spike at 7:10. or I'm sorry, it says I think 4:30 p.m. And it was like about 1750, the number here for feet. On March 20, it went to 1740 at about 2:40 a.m. It's almost the same type of spike, same type of drastic leap, but the actions taken were not the same. And I think that's what I'm trying to understand. I'm hearing that you're saying there's multiple things happening, but if you're saying we're looking at the spike in the water, and these are the spikes, and it's pretty much the same, but the after decisions were not. I don't understand that. And in doing so, people stayed in their homes, and that caused a lot of chaos.
So let us make that clear to you when we do the after-action report. And maybe we don't even have to wait to the after-action report to get you that specific information. But, you know, we don't control the refreshing of the data. The data comes to us. And it also depends on the period of time. So I don't know what you're looking at as far as period of time, but that either magnifies the spike or it demagnifies the spike. And we're looking at it real time as it upgrades, and I think it comes to us from DLNR. And I think you all know, because of the coverage in the paper, there's this tension between Dole, who does not like us to use the word failure. They talk about that, and they write about that, and they actually have public announcements where they say the city was wrong to talk about failure. But the truth is, you never know when the rain's going to quit, and you never know about the integrity of the embankments. And they can put a water bladder around the top, which they did, and we're thankful for that. But the truth is, you don't want to be in a situation where after the fact you say, I wish I had called for an evacuation because I didn't know the bank was going to fail. So we have a trigger point, and I believe it's 85 feet. It's 85 feet at Lake Wilson. And we're watching that every time it updates to see how close it gets to 85 feet. And 85 feet is not actually a failure point, it's a risk of failure point, and that's when they put out the evacuation notices. So let us get you more detailed information so that I think we can answer your questions better, because right now I don't think I'm doing a very good job.
Thank you, MD. And your last point, you did say that at 85 feet, but again, I think that's my question. So according to the timeline, that was at 8:30 a.m. on the next day, March 20th, where the storm started on the 19th, and by then the homes are flooded beyond. So are we using the right metrics? I think that's where I'm confused.
I believe we are.
Does it make sense?
I believe we are.
85 feet was where the Wahiawa Reservoir, that was 8:30 a.m. on March 20th, but by then a lot of the damage had been done.
So let us get you that information. I mean, I'm only down there for my shift, but I can tell you that everybody is watching the water levels, and then when you reach that point, you have to make a decision, knowing that Dole and others are going to say that's a premature decision. You should not be evacuating people out of the community. And what we look at when we make an evacuation order is, where are the people going to go? So where do the homeless go? Do we have shelters stood up for the homeless? And where do the people that are going to leave their houses, do they have family that they can go to? Or are we going to ask them to pay for hotels out of their pockets? We know people would prefer to stay in their homes. So it's not a black and white judgment call. And all of that is being informed by conversations with the state and with the first responders and with CORE. What are we going to do with the homeless? It's all the totality, and we do our best. And I think the director wanted to make...
Who makes that decision? You mentioned that the decision is collaborated. It seems like it's at some point subjective. But who was the one that made that decision?
I think it depends on who's in charge at the time. So if Director Collins is at the EOC, it would be him based upon the counseling of the people that are advising him. If Director Walters is there and he's home sleeping for a period of time, it would be Director Walters. So we can get that information to you.
It lied in DEM. That's what you're saying. It wasn't you or
No,
Mayor.
but we can get you that information.
Okay, thank you so much.
No, thank you. And I think Managing Director pointed out that a lot of what we're talking about now can be covered in the after action report. And we could have another hearing once that becomes available. We are losing members. I know we lost half of the public so far. And I do want to spend a little bit of time on what we're doing now, currently. I do want to note that we've been at it for 2 hours now. But thank you. Great questions. Councilmember Cordero.
Chair, I can ask questions when we're back in discussion if we happen to take testimony first? If,
No, why don't you go ahead now? And then,
okay, I'll try to make this really quick.
okay.
So first off, thank you, Chair. Hi, Director. I just want to ask for two things, two components. One is just on the day of and when you make those decisions, as well as for the long-term planning. First off, would it be feasible, since as an island community, we may face water levels that may surprise us again, to lower those metrics that Councilmember Okimoto mentioned, to then request for evacuation of a community?
Thank you for the question. Again, it goes beyond just the level. And just to reiterate a little bit, as MD just mentioned about the 85 feet, we have meetings as it's approaching 85 feet. At 82 feet or at 81 feet, we have meetings. And we're talking with all the other stakeholders that are involved in these things and trying to evaluate what's the water going to do and what's the status of the dam and so forth. But it's even beyond that. It's our question to the emergency responders were, how much time do you need to get resources in place to conduct an evacuation?
Okay,
that's an hour. How long does the evacuation take? That's 2 hours. So now all of a sudden we're trying to figure out, okay, how much time do we have before 81 feet, 82 feet, before 85 feet? So when do we know when to pull the trigger on an evacuation? So it's not just as simple as 85 feet.
I understand.
It's about what the resources are available as well.
Okay, I'm sure we can discuss that more later when we do talk about this further. My next is as it relates to when people are looking for safety, they don't want the kapakahi communication of like, hey, we're only gonna take care of city resources and city property. I know that people need help here, whether it be private property or private communities, and how do we just go past the bureaucratic bull and then just help and save people?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again?
How do we get past bureaucracy and figuring out what we are able to respond to, because whether or not city streets, city properties, city assets, and then just like help save people?
Of course. So if we can see it coming, then we obviously can pre-position resources and that sort of thing. In this particular case, the forecast did not indicate that we would be in a flash flooding situation, and so we didn't have that opportunity to get those resources. We tried to get those resources in as quickly as possible, which is also why we were very much ready to, as soon as we could, initiate search and rescue operations, and as soon as we could, have high water vehicles from the National Guard in place and so forth. So, and that's how you do it. If you know things are coming, then we put things in place. If a hurricane was coming, we get several days and we start making those precautions. We start staging those resources. We start asking for additional resources. If we don't have resources in place because we didn't have advance warning, now we're trying to assemble our resources from the status of our resources across the island who are doing their regular day-to-day activities in the police districts, in their fire areas, and so forth. And we're responding based on 911 calls, which are calls in, dispatches out based on priority. And so that's the way that we activate until we can then unify and get under one organized structure.
Okay, and so the second topic is, I know a lot of us and many of the community across the island watched the Special Neighborhood Board number 27 North Shore Neighborhood Board meeting, and we saw that the CCSR, Dr. Fox, was called out to help lead a possible task force regarding the watershed study and for future planning for flood mitigation. As an island community that is facing plenty communities, even if they are further from the coastlines. And so are we shifting these long-term plannings from the Department of Planning and Permitting and other agencies to the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability and Resiliency?
Councilmember, just to make sure I understand the question correctly, Krishna Jay, I'm Deputy Managing Director. You're asking whether we're going to restructure who's responsible for those roles going forward. Is that yes. Correct? So as of right now, we're going to be, as you noted, Dr. Fox will be part of that group, and we'll be taking a hard look at how we do this. We don't believe that there's anything currently structurally incorrect with how we're doing things, but that's something we'll always take a look at. And if I might, your second question, I think I understood you to say what are we doing so that the bureaucracy doesn't get in the way of us helping
Yes.
the public. And what I want to emphasize is what MD and Dr. Collins has mentioned. In the midst of this, it's all chaos, and we have structure, and we're trying to make order out of chaos. I don't think at any point any bureaucracy got in the way of us helping people. It's just the circumstances that were there were so challenging, and we're doing the best we can. And I also want to thank Councilmember Tupola for acknowledging Andy Sugg. The reason you all were hearing from him is because he was the designated person to communicate as much information as possible in as timely a fashion as possible to council. So I appreciate the Vice Chair's acknowledgement that he did a good job in this, and thank you for that.
Thank you. And thank you, Deputy Managing Director, for those responses. I tried to ask the questions as quick as possible, and I'll yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kielaina.
No questions, but I just want to make some comments. I said it yesterday, and I'll say it again, since I think these issues overlap. I just want to make sure that the administration, I feel like a lot what we're talking about is boots on the ground with not just what happens, but what is continuing with regard to immediate relief. But I believe that we have to have a financial resources strategy on how we are going to prepare for both medium and long-term strategies. As I mentioned, with regard to the pool of funding that you're going to have the city, state, and federal level, there's immediate disaster-related funding, including a multitude of disaster supplemental that we need to make sure those are moving vehicles. But we also need to pivot with regard to all current funding streams. That could be either reprogrammed or, as we're going through the budget, to allocate those resources and reprioritize. And that will be not just within the city, in concert with the state and the federal government. Again, I will reiterate, because a lot of people did not have insurance, both individuals as businesses. The type of relief efforts, similar to COVID, needs to be strategic, because we don't have ARPA funds. So where are those funds going to come from? We're going to either need to increase, right, or figure out what we could use within the confines. And I'm going to defer to my colleagues whose districts were more impacted, clearly, because what we faced was nothing compared to what my other colleagues faced. But I did want to put in a plug for our farmers, because similar to COVID, they too easily fell in the cracks, because all of the programs that were set up they didn't qualify. So all I'm asking, I know that the governor had a emergency farmer relief program set up, so that while you're contemplating your financial strategy, that we also include the farmers, because I already know that you're looking at all of the other resources that need to be pulled as it affects families and businesses. But whatever we could do, whether it be in relief or similar to what we did with regard to our agricultural grants program, remember, up to 60 farmers. I do know that we're looking at the we're waiting for the data from the Department of Agriculture, but the Agricultural Stewardship Hawaii has provided some data with regard to numbers. I look forward to working with you guys on a long-term strategy.
Councilmember, thank you. And with respect to farmers, OER is actively working with the state as we speak. And thank you for emphasizing all of those points. Those are exact points the MD made earlier this week.
Thank you. I'd like to now turn to our public testimony. We have a number of registered testifiers, starting with Mark Kaku. Is Mark Kaku present? Aloha, welcome.
Thank you. This is my first time doing this, so I hope I don't make too many mistakes. What I'd like to point out is DM, the EOC, has been operating on a level equal or better than the military. I come from a DoD background, retired. I'm a volunteer, I'm a civilian, and I'd like to point out that the first thing we have to do as civilians is take responsibility and start doing things for ourselves and get things ready. And the DEM EOC director has been pre-event, event, and post-event, has been going out to the civilian population with outreach and trying to prepare us for just this event today, in the past week. I'd like to point out, too, that there was some talk about, was that 1 minute? Okay, can I just
I'll let
add,
you finish up, sure.
can I
Go
just
ahead.
add one thing? I was made aware that in Mokuleia, the flood did not come from the streams, it came across the fields. So even if you had rain gauges in the streams, they were surprised from and this is family. And they lost everything, their car got stuck in the mud, they only had the shirts on their back. And from what I found out, they had the warning. They were warned to evacuate, but being human, we tend to, oh, we got a little bit more time, you know. It's not gonna be that bad, you know. Then when they got another warning, they said, okay, we better pack up the vehicle. And while they're driving down the road, coming from the field, not coming from a stream, the water came through and took their car to the side. And that's what happened with them. But again, with the outreach, the CERT groups, the way we're handling it before these events, I have to commend, thank the EOC, the DEM. I'd like to thank all of you for bringing it up, our attention. And thank you very much for letting me go over 1 minute. And you guys have a great day. I really appreciate all of you.
Thank you. Which kind of begs the question, like, where do you evacuate to, right? Where do you go from Mokuleia? You're not going to go Wailua, right? But that was a rhetorical question. Thank you so much. Well, not meant for you to answer, that is. But I do want to get through the rest of the testifiers. Dottie Kelly Paddock, aloha, welcome back. Aloha, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Dottie Kelly Paddock speaking, and I have really learned a lot from this session. First of all, I want to make it really clear that my assessment of DEM and their actions taken have been right on. This is the best DEM director I've ever experienced in the city and county of Honolulu. He's been here less than 1 year, and the first month that he got here, he was making the rounds to the districts. He's been to my districts at least 5 or 6 times, maybe more, because he's always visiting new people in the district and getting to know them and the issues of each district. Every place is so different from the other place. I believe you really have to do that. I've been working in emergency management in our community of Hau'ula since 2011, since the Tokushima tsunami and earthquake. Someone came to me on the neighborhood board my first night and said, what are we gonna do in Hau'ula when this happens? Do we have an emergency plan? Well, we do now, because that fellow was a retired colonel from the Army. And I tapped him on the shoulder and I said, hey, Bert, how about helping us with that emergency plan? We've now trained over 200 community members in CERT training. 200. We have volunteers coming out our ears when we ask for volunteers to help out. What have our disasters been in Hau'ula, you might ask me? The winds, the rain, the power off for 4 to 5 days, the Wi-Fi out. Both grocery stores in our district are closed, and our roads are blocked on each end of the district. We can't get out. And our water quality is horrible. We have 600 to 700 cesspools in Hau'ula, and we're trying to get rid of them but all of them were flooded. So what does that mean? We've got brown water all over our community and in our ocean, of course. And that is a disaster in and of itself. Many, many disasters combined. So I want to tell you that the CNHA reached out to us, and they came and asked how they could help us. And one big thing was helping get us roll-offs so we could clean out people's houses. We did have flooding in people's houses. And our roads were very flooded, and many people lost their cars. So we also asked for cesspools to be pumped, and they're helping us with that pumping, but it's going to be so few. You know, it's not enough. So I just want to share our story of our district with 22 streams. I know we haven't got stream gauges on most of those streams. So I hope that in the future we all learn from this and can do better. And I think the city council might want to go through a CERT training someday, because I think it would help you understand some of the questions you're asking about in terms of emergencies and how you respond. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And I did want to spend some time today, if we have time, we've been at it for 2 hours, to talk about immediate needs, short-term needs, and long-term needs of the community, because I think that'll be helpful for the administration and us to hear that so that we can help. Sir, I know in the front row, I didn't get your name, but why don't you come up next and testify? Can you start by stating your name?
Aloha mai kako. My name is Preston Brewski Lewis. You guys will probably all know me as Brewski over social media and whatnot. I'm here to represent the community of Wailua. I've been from the start of the first raindrop. I live 3 houses down from Otaki Farm. So I've seen it from start to finish. And I'm still there working right now. But I'll share with you guys the first 48 hours. Communication, very limited. We didn't know what was going on with, of course, emergency sirens and whatnot. And the community stepped up and took initiative. Businesses, farmers, and they pooled all their equipment. And all the local heroes from the Rita families and the Souza family, Noah, all those guys. But being there and rescuing the families and the ohana and the community and getting into safety and knowing during that times of 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, knowing that the streets were closed, we were kind of trapped. You know, knowing that Wailua High School was an emergency place for the community was getting shut down. So yeah, we felt vulnerable and lost. But still, as a community, we still pulled together and we made sure we got everyone home, out and safe. And following the next day, Saturday, myself, Levi, and the rest of the boys that were out saving, we went back to their homes. We checked on the families, you know, assessed their homes and the damages, the mud, and came up with our own game plan on removing that and calling our friends and families and calling the longshoremen, and they came in abundantly with help. And watching the families come home firsthand and seeing the grandmas and grandpas fall to their knees, and generations of 60 years of living there, they lost everything. And they're lost for words. And we were the ones to pick them up and tell them, everything will be okay. We are here for you. I'm gonna get this cleaned up and I'll get you right back in. And right now, we are not stopping. And the great thing is we have awesome backing from you folks. And thank you so much for sending Ed, Sniffin, Warren. We're standing side by side. They're getting things done for us. And thank you for sending an abundance of equipment and help. It is moving very quickly. And the progress that we're doing. We already are at the rebuilding stage. You know, now we need the material to get the drywall, the lumber, all these things. So we're moving very fastly as a community. And I think as a community, what we're looking for is how can we all work together to figure out these problems now and for the near future of our land, our waterways, and in management so that we don't run into these future problems, that the community will feel trapped or no communication, that we can act fast and get everyone safe. But other than that, thank you so much, Council and Chairman, and thank you for your endless support.
No, I appreciate you being here, and thank you for staying for this portion of the hearing. And I saw you out there myself and the people out there working together. So you're right, you know, Ed Sniffin and Warren and those guys were out there with you and your community. So what you're saying, though, you need materials. You need lumber, you need drywall, you need stuff like tradesmen. But how's the police presence? How's that been?
Oh, it's been great. It looks like Fort Knox down in Wailua right now. But yes, the community is moving very fast. And Ed is on the gas with us as well and moving forward. But it's not just Wailua, it's the other communities as well. And it's island-wide, you know. And we want to make sure that the state of Hawaii is safe, and we are confident in that you guys are going to keep us safe. Yeah.
Do you think, well, one of the things that Maui did, you know, after the wildfire, they shut down the roads. And, you know, I was out there on Kuhio Day, and they shut down Farrington Highway, but the traffic along the beach road was immense. And it looked like I saw a bunch of tourists out there. Do you think it might be helpful for the police maybe to shut down there so you guys can get the work done?
Yes. Not to point fingers or anything, but that was an issue that we did run into during our rescues and recoveries of the families, you know. They did have the roads blocked. They did prevent us from going in with our equipment to get these people out, because we understand that you guys have to follow an order to keep you folks safe and us safe. But I know as myself as a man, I'm going to take action to make sure that my loved ones and my family is safe and my community is safe, regardless of what's going on. I'll put my life on the line for everyone.
Oh, thank you. You know, one of the calls that I got was for a water truck to, now that the debris is drying up, so it's getting airborne, and you know, it might be contaminated. So one of the things we thought of, maybe outdoor showers, temporary showers for volunteers to come and rinse off, either periodically or at least at the end of the day. You think that might be helpful?
Yes. So I know that we have our own water trucks as a community. So we are constantly throughout the day wetting the ground, making sure that all the dust doesn't get airborne, because we do know the severity of the health of what's to come if we are working in that areas. But like I said, we're kind of past the cleanup. It's kind of just managing the dust control. There's not too many people coming out. It's now just on the rebuild and getting them back into their homes. But there are several homes out there that do still need the addressing of cleanup and whatnot.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Members, any follow-up questions for Mr. Lewis? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. It was my honor.
Next, we have Evelyn Lane. Aloha and welcome.
Aloha. I'm really glad to be here today, and I really want to thank the mayor's office for hiring Dr. Randall Collins, who has spent a lot of time with me on in the community that I live in Kahuku. A few years ago, we had some issues with fires. I live at the Kahuku Senior Housing, which is the low-income HUD property with 64 residents. And our property is in and around the city and county's property, which would be the golf course and some other lands around. So I'd been on it with the mayor and everyone about trying to get some trees cut down. And then in May, when Dr. Collins arrived, he came straight out to Kahuku. And he's been helping us ever since. In fact, we were supposed to have a Kahuku mitigation day started with volunteers from Team Rubicon. I became a CERT team member as well. I'm involved with the Hula Community Center, and we all work together on the windward side to try to protect ourselves from disasters. And I think that the state, the city, the county, and all of the elected officials really need to look at putting more money into the budget for emergency management so we can do prevention, so we don't have to spend the money that we are going to be spending to do remediation. And I've been through an Otaki flood in 2008 that was a Christmas parade day flood. Many people could have been injured, but we were lucky that the flood came down from Waialua a little bit after the parade. But we had water rescues back then. Donovan Dela Cruz was the city council member at that time, and we were talking about what could we do about the dam back then. I think that dam needs to be removed because it's so dangerous. It's 7 minutes. That's how much time you have, 7 minutes to get out if that dam breaks. And I was there for the fire in Waialua when the Waialua Hills burned. My brother, and maybe some of you remember Jake Ng, he was a fire commissioner. He, my brother, my nephew were on the front page of the Advertiser holding down the fire from burning their houses. How ironic. And here we are still in the same situation because we need to take emergency management more serious as a state, as a city and county. All you have to do is go through a few disasters. I was in the San Francisco earthquake. I was so close to the Oakland fire that it was pushing against us and I could feel the heat. So I think we're really lucky to have an incident command director like Dr. Randy Collins because he really knows the system and he has a background in this and none of us do. And so I'm really grateful that he's here. It was one of the best confirmations that you all have ever made. Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. Next, we have Jeffrey Cabales Jr.
Aloha mai kako, everybody. My name is Jeffrey Cabales. I am a former DOD, former first responder, healthcare professional at Queens Health Systems, proud volunteer with the DEM, and I've been very active with all of our volunteer organizations active in disasters for a number of years now. But I stand before you today as a private citizen. All of the opinions and statements I share today are my own and don't reflect the organizations that I have the privilege of serving with. I think today, if there's anything that we've learned, is that we as a people of Hawaii respond really, really well. We all come together no matter what it takes, whether it's the first responders ditching their families to go out there to save lives, or if it's the community grabbing their tractors to go out and pull people from homes. We respond very, very well. What we don't do very well is we don't mitigate and prepare, as we heard Evelyn just share now, and some of my other colleagues share. I think right now we're estimating at least $100 million for our island alone when it comes to damages. It costs a lot of money to do trainings, it costs a lot of money to staff, and it costs a lot of money to do preparedness and mitigation efforts. But as a city, would we rather spend $100 million recovering from a disaster or $100 million preparing so that we don't have to have a disaster response, right? At the end of the day, I think all of us know what the obvious answer is. right? We'd much rather put all of our time, money, and investments into ensuring that our city, our people, our community are better prepared. We have a saying in emergency management that the best disaster response is the one that doesn't have to happen, because we were prepared well enough to not have to respond, right? Again, I thank everybody here. I thank the council. I thank the fellow community for showing up today. Thank you.
No, thank you, Mr. Cabales. I think you're spot on, and that's what I'd like to encourage the council to do, is look at ways to mitigate so that this doesn't happen again, whether it's stream cleaning, resilience hubs. You know, resilience hubs are a great idea. One, it's a place to evacuate to, but also where we could hold classes and get the community involved, which is actually part of these plans. That's what DEM's supposed to do. It sounds like they're doing it in your community, so great news. Next is Michael Miller.
Hey, aloha, it's Michael Miller. Some of you guys know me from Tiki's Grill and Bar. I took off this afternoon because I think this is really important. I'm glad you guys are having and learning more about what's going on behind the scenes and things like that. I'm lucky enough that I volunteer for the Department of Emergency Management in RACES, or the ham radio guys, as backup communications. I've been activated. The call has gone out via their system. We get a text message first, then we get a phone call, and then we get emails on what's happening, what they need help with, and what the timelines are. Sometimes you're activated to go in, and sometimes you're asked to join the calls, the briefing calls. So I've been lucky enough to be part of that and understanding the different systems that are going. And I can say it is very organized and it's very structured of what's going on. So I've had that opportunity to see that. And then each person that's in that EOC has their normal job that they're doing, and they're asked to come in and serve at the table at the different positions. And it's absolutely amazing to see Jennifer or Director Collins get up and give the briefing and let everyone know, whether you're on the Zoom call or you're in person or you're in a different room in the EOC, this is what's going on. These are our priorities today. And if you need something, speak up, let us know, put it in the system so it can be tracked. Each of your districts had something going on with it. And along with what calls you are getting from your constituencies, everyone else is getting calls. And so all that information from the 911 was getting fed in, and they have to make decisions on who needs to be rescued first and who needs what resources first. And that's where I think getting to know, I think the managing director said it best, is getting in there and kind of seeing how the system works so you can really understand what's going on at the level and the volume of what's going on and how many people, both on the professional side and the volunteer side, are helping out. So thanks for your time.
No, thank you for being here, Mr. Miller. Appreciate it. I did not know that you are a volunteer with DEM. That's great. Thank you. We also have two registered testifiers testifying remotely, starting with Denise Antolini, followed by Raquel Achiu. Thank you for waiting patiently. Let's start with Denise Antolini. Aloha, welcome.
Aloha, Aloha, Chair Waters, members of the council, members of the public, members of the mayor's team. My name is Denise Antolini. I'm a Pupukea resident. As I said in my submitted testimony, I only had minor damage, but I'm really here as a community voice. I am a member of the neighborhood board, participated in the meeting last week. A couple of key points: these rain bombs are going to increase in intensity and severity and frequency. We know that. So now is the time to ramp up, and unpredictability is part of the pattern of these rain bombs as climate changes. Second, big mahalo to the mayor and his team. The response after the initial period has been really strong, but the initial period, I think, is where the council members' questions have focused, and I think that will be very much revealed in the after incident report. I would ask in that after accident or after incident report that the public have a voice, because the public has been on the, the community's on the ground. They know what happened. So it can't just be gauges, digital, sitting downtown in Honolulu. With all due respect, it's got to have a community component so you really know what happened on the ground. You've heard from a few community members, but obviously people can't come and wait for, to testify like we are. Two more quick points. As Kathleen Pahinui, our neighborhood board chair, and Raquel and I on the neighborhood board, we really support OCCSR taking the lead on an update to the Kayaka Bay watershed plan, which would produce an action plan, not another study, but an action plan. And the reason that's important for OCCSR and not DEM is that we really need to look at land use patterns and development and how water flows. It's not just about the reservoir, it's not just about the streams, as other people mentioned. The rain bomb was, broad in its scope. So we really think that updating that action plan, which is a strong foundation, is really, really critical. The last point is contamination. We really want the city to step forward and coordinate, they don't have to do it all, but coordinate the testing for pollutants, air, water, soil, all those things need to be tested now. Samples need to be taken now and preserved in the appropriate way according to the right protocol and chain of custody. But that's absolutely critical because of the public health risk to all of those who live in the community, all of those who have helped in recovery. I'll conclude by saying the community response was phenomenal. You've heard it over and over again. It was absolutely phenomenal, and it just breaks my heart to think about that the community had to respond at that phenomenal level. The city's response needs some work, and I think the council's asked some very good questions. I look forward to continuing discussions on this matter. Mahalo.
Thank you. Next, we have Raquel Chu. Aloha, welcome.
Aloha, Chair, council members, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Thank you so much. Raquel Achu, Wailoa Moku, Vice Chair of the Neighborhood Board. Submitting comment on my own individual capacity, a Wailoa lifelong generational Wailoa family. This is the hardest part of all of this. Our community swung into swift mode, and for that, forever grateful. I think emotions kick in, especially after hearing the director's responses to how their reaction and response took place. And I think we have a lot of work to do. I think hearing that for the first time really validates my initial feelings. I was at neighborhood board as well when we had the meeting, and I'm very grateful to Mayor and his team for showing up, knowing full well it was not going to be a pleasant experience, although it could have been far worse. I'm grateful for the city's interaction and the relationship we have with each and every one of you. Our council member has been boots on the ground since day one, and everyone crawling up his leg, demanding and wanting, and just trying to understand how we navigate these hard times. We're talking about 3 storms back to back with minimal to no time to recover in between, with each event being more intense. This is not just about the dam. It rained everywhere. Ka'ala was the water eruption of Kilauea. She shot out some water that no one could have ever anticipated. But we have a lot of issues out here, and we've been stomping our feet about it for many, many years. Waterways, land use that has caused diversions of water, ability to really navigate our land space and provide appropriate measures to prepare. I think the storm too provided a lot of information and hype, and we didn't get that the second go. Even if they thought it wasn't going to be a lot, we were already saturated from a pretty major event. Those things need to be taken into consideration. There's a lot I could say. I'm sure you'll hear much more of it in time to come. My goal is hopefully to, and I have shared this at our neighborhood board, my goal is to ensure that we have strong collaboration to extend on the improvements that are needed to ensure that we get the process and plans. It's not to say we didn't have a good one, but times have changed and we have to adjust to the way our environment has changed. So I look forward to those collaborations and input and appreciate everyone's time, and thank you so much.
No, thank you. Appreciate you being here today to share your story. Members, that's it for the registered testifiers. I'd like to turn it over to the folks in the audience. Is there anybody else who didn't register who'd like to testify today? Seeing none.
Chair, I was going to ask if I could call up a testifier, if it's appropriate.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Lewis, would you like to say a few more words? Yep, please. Please proceed.
Mahalo, Chair.
Aloha once again. So what I was overhearing about the city, you guys are short on the equipment and getting that out to the community. But the community has the resources, and you guys have seen it from us just working nonstop. And we have the resources, we have knowledge of our lands. So you guys can use us to your advantage and subcontract all these businesses that are already working and know the waterways and know the land. And that's how we can work together and get this all cleaned up. And that's just another outlet for you guys to use, and we're here to help.
I appreciate that very much. One of the things that when Levi was driving us around, we spoke to one of the flood victims of Otake Camp. He talked about the stream behind his house not being cleaned. And I've been a proponent for cleaning the streams since I've been here. But is that something that the community, if given the permission by the city administration, could help with cleaning the streams? Of course, hopefully we pay you guys, right? But because there's 57 streams around the island.
Yes.
And there's different jurisdictions. I did bring with me the statute that gives the city the ability to go in, even when on private property, and clean the streams. That's Ordinance 40-2.4, right of entry and inspection. But you bring up a good idea. Like, you think that's something that we'd be able to work together on and have the community members? Because I saw the machines that your community has.
Yes, and a lot of them are all their personal machines, and their personal fuel and everything, the mechanics, like everyone's just coming together and working together. And I'm sure with you folks, we can do this as the state of Hawaii.
Awesome. I think we still have the managing director here and the deputy managing director, so maybe we can connect you to Councilmember Kia'aina.
Can I just make a comment? I was smiling only because you said streams, which is the most complicated. So hopefully, in concert with Councilmember Wire and the administration, perhaps they could prioritize parameters of what might be the less stringent with regard to impacts to the environment. That would be easier to deal with because streams, it depends on where, yeah? You got all of these permitting processes that you got to go through. But that's all. I was smiling.
I appreciate that. Streams and ditches, too. Any other follow-up questions, Councilmember Wire? No? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for
much mahalo for your time.
Aloha. I think we have one more unregistered testifier with their hands up. Is that Tim Gary? Please proceed.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Tim Gary. Thanks for having this meeting, and I appreciate it. I've been listening intently. I had a couple of points that I'd like to offer. It seems to me the weather service is not reliable. The mayor came out with warnings of this storm early, and the weather service didn't predict the rain bomb. Number two, people should not live in flood areas. Is it your plan to allow them to rebuild after numerous floods over and over? I was on the North Shore 50 years ago. Same thing happened. We're 50 years later, it's still flooding. And then I had another question. what are you going to do if you only get 60% of your federal funding? Do you have a plan in place? So these are just a couple of points. I appreciate all your work, and I really appreciate the people that live in Wailua that stepped up and provided life-saving efforts. My bottom line is you can't really rely on government. If we had a hurricane, the same thing would happen. I urge everybody to have their own action plan. Thanks for your time.
Appreciate your testimony today, and may I also refer you to honolulucitycouncil.org, our website, for yesterday's hearing. The managing director did a really good job explaining what the possible financial plan is, which you can access. And then your point, as far as the National Weather Service, my understanding is that the Molokai Doppler radar went offline the week before, and I think that contributed partly to the problem. But members, it is now almost 4 o'clock, but I do want to give members an opportunity to ask one more quick round of questions if you like. If not, we can go for closing comments. So, Councilmember Wire.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I'll just do closing comments too, so I'll defer if folks have questions.
I believe, please proceed.
Okay, yeah, no, and I just wanted to get through at least the pre-phase today, because I'm really grateful for all the work and the engagement by the city and the state to bring in and work with the community. They were doing a lot of work, so we've seen a lot of improvement. Grateful for environmental services out doing the pumping. You know, we have that number too in Hawaiian Council. I was talking to them earlier and grateful for their pumping as well. The CAC that's being stood up also in the EA, and the work at the Hui Ha'ula is doing with so many resources too. It's a community effort, and I think we can all collaborate together, and so grateful for that. And then of course, just kind of wrapping up, you know, I think looping in more local labor organizations into your after action plan in terms of how they can be useful in response is good. I want to just reemphasize what came up. DM was super helpful working in the midst of everything with adjusting the messaging, you know, getting as much into that text as possible, because the folks without power couldn't open the links, get maps. But of course, there's a word limit, and you can't do photos and infographics. And then let alone the language access issues we dealt with, you know, from Ilocano, Tagalog, Thai, Cambodian, Laotian, Pacific Islander languages. So I know rapid response, it's hard to do that, but we should evaluate how we can better get that information out. I think with the shelters, you know, and again, admin was responsive. So when we asked for showers, we got them. But I think contemplating beforehand, because, you know, the challenge in seeing, like, you know, Red Cross shelter at Lelehua, the stuff's delivered. The only folks there are the school staff. So like Jackie Freitas, you know, the teacher we had here was out there along with other school staff. And then, you know, there was that disconnect with what the district park's doing versus what the school's doing. And I know this is all, you know, into the planning, but, you know, flood victims coming out need the showers and the clothes, right? We had to get shirts from the school to give them shirts, the folks that are shivering there. And so I think just having pre-placed stuff would be helpful, knowing that we're relying on volunteers a lot of times. What I do appreciate about current director's position is the desire to expand DEM, because we do need a greater presence to kind of coordinate that, you know, to see like, oh, we don't have the cots over at the district park because Red Cross delivered them to the school. Or the fact that we didn't have an official shelter on the Kolau side until much, much later. I mean, Kukuel came in early, never fully opened because of no staffing, right? They were letting folks use the restroom, but it closed. I think Kaneohe District Park opened at some point. You folks were flooded, yeah? Huio'ahu'ula had access issues. Thankfully, kind of at the community level, BYU and Key Project both had, you know, facilities, but then not having that in an official alert, for whatever reason, you know, because I know there's talking that through with different orgs, but we need to have a place that's going out officially. Understanding with the, how many rock slides, 8, 10, and folks are trapped for a little bit. Those are just kind of the stuff I wanted to get through at the front end to share. And I know we'll talk more about, you know, the immediate recovery more of the cesspool management, but appreciate you providing this opportunity today, Chair, and really do appreciate the partnership that's grown with the city administration and the state and everyone here at the council.
Thank you so much. And I do want to, because it is running late, I do want to have another hearing at the appropriate time to discuss the after action plan and maybe the virtual EOC, if we could even do that offline. I think that'd be great for us to learn about that. Members, any final comments? Council members, seeing none. Thank you again. Thank you, Managing Director, Deputy Managing Director, and mayors and the public for being here today. Like I said, I do want to convene another meeting, but I'll let you folks know when that is. Thank you. We're adjourned.